that they were going to be judged by how many mistakes they were going to make and whether or not they were going to screw up. Now, the second similarity that I noticed was to do with self-image. You see, my daughter, she knew what good piano sounded like, right? Because we've all heard good piano. And she knew what her level was, and she knew how long she'd have to play for to play like that. And a lot of Malaysians, I noticed, had this idea of what good, proper English is supposed to sound like, and what their, I see a lot of you nodding, and what their English sounded like, and how far they'd have to go to get there. And they also felt like they were, like my daughter, just bad. Bad piano player, bad English speaker, right? My English not so good lah, cannot, sorry ah, shaya, cannot ah. So I could see these similarities, but I still couldn't figure out, okay, what is it about these people like Faisal that are so different, that can just do it smoothly, calmly, with confidence? And one day I discovered that answer, and I discovered it quite by chance. It was a day when my computer broke down and I had to go to a cyber cafe. Now, okay, it was my first time, and I discovered cyber cafes are disgusting places, okay? They're really gross. They're smelly, and they're filled with boys, and they're all playing noisy, violent games. They're just disgusting places. But I had to go there. So I sit down, and I start noticing this guy beside me, and I become very, very interested in this guy next to me. Now, this guy is playing this game that is basically, it's like shooting people until they die, and that's it, right? That's the game, right? And I'm noticing that this guy is not very good. He's like, in fact, terrible, right? Because I'm looking and I'm seeing like a lot of shooting and not much dying, right? But what really interested me was behind this lousy player were three of his friends sort of standing there watching him play. And what I really noticed was, even though this guy was terrible, even though his friends were watching him, there was no embarrassment. There was no feeling of being judged. There was no shyness. In fact, quite the opposite. This guy's like totally focused on the bad guy, smile on his face. All he can think about is killing these guys, right? And I'm watching him, and I suddenly realized, this is it. This is the same attitude that people like Faisal have when they speak English. Just like this guy, when Faisal goes into an English conversation, he doesn't feel judged.
Good afternoon, distinguished delegates, colleagues, and friends. Thank you for your patience waiting here while we worked out the issues that we had with translation. On behalf of the incoming COP30 presidency, it is my honor to welcome you to this mandated dialogue, advancing the role of local communities in the UNFCCC process. Let me begin with some housekeeping points. For this mandated dialogue, interpretation will be available in UN languages, English, Spanish, French, and Arabic. Portuguese interpretation is also available and organized through the
A
Ministry of Racial
interpretação em
Equality of
português
Brazil.
está disponível e
Unfortunately, we're still having some minor
organizada pelo
difficulties
Brasil.
with both French
Infelizmente,
and
estamos
Portuguese
tendo problemas
translation.
com
We
a
will
tradução do
interrupt this
português e
session
do
to let you know as soon as
francês.
it is online. Please, sorry, estamos com alguns problemas com a tradução para o português e iremos avisá-lo assim que estiver disponibilizada.
We're having some problems with Portuguese interpretation. We'll let you know once they are solved.
On your device. I would also like to request that all participants taking the floor kindly to speak slowly at a reasonable pace so that the interpreters can easily translate. Meeting documents include the agenda, the concept note, and guiding questions are available on the event webpage. You can scan the QR code to access these documents. This meeting is being recorded and will be available on demand after the meeting. Virtual participation is arranged through Microsoft Teams. Please use the raise hand functionality if you want to take the floor. Live webcast can be accessed through the link available on the event webpage. As you know, the role of local communities in climate action has long been recognized under the UNFCCC. The Paris Agreement sets forth a clear foundation. Its preamble calls upon parties to respect, promote, consider their respective obligations on human rights, the right to health, and the rights of indigenous peoples, local communities, migrants, children, persons with disabilities, and people in vulnerable situations when taking into action to address climate change. Article 7 of the Paris Agreement affirms that climate change adaptation action should be based on and guided by the best available science and, as appropriate, traditional knowledge, knowledge of indigenous peoples, and local community systems. COP21 also established the Local Communities and Indigenous People Platform, LCIPP, for the exchange of experiences and sharing of best practices on mitigation and adaptation in a holistic and integrated manner. This recognition has been reinforced in several subsequent COP and CMA decisions. Most recently, Decision 14 CP29, paragraph 15 states, noted with appreciation that activities and mandated events under the local communities and Indigenous peoples platform, as well as meetings of its facilitative working group, remain open to and inclusive of local communities and a wide range of contributors. It also encouraged parties, constituted bodies, and particularly the facilitative working group to consider ways to further engage local communities across work streams under the Convention and the Paris Agreement. And lastly, it invited the incoming COP30 presidency to convene a thematic workshop and dialogues aligned with the LCIPP work plan. This is precisely why we are gathered here today. Our aim in this dialogue is to help advance concrete, inclusive pathways to ensure that local voices are meaningfully reflected in the UNFCCC processes and outcomes. To set the stage and to officially open our discussions, it is my pleasure to invite Ronaldo dos Santos, Secretary of Policies for Quilombola Peoples, Traditional Communities of African Descent, Tejeros, and Romani of the Ministry of Racial Equality, to deliver his opening remarks.
Boa tarde a todos e todas.
Good afternoon,
Afternoon, ladies and
everyone.
gentlemen.
Trago uma saudação do Brasil em nome do presidente da COP30, embaixador André Corrêa do Lago, e da ministra da Igualdade Racial, Aniele Franco.
I would like to bring a warm welcome to all of you on behalf of COP President Ambassador André Correia do Lago and Minister of Racial Equality Aniele Franco.
Um prazer imenso estar aqui com vocês nessa Semana do Clima na África, aqui em Addis Abeba, e poder falar sobre algumas coisas que são de grande importância para nós, para as comunidades tradicionais, os povos afrodescendentes, os agricultores e agricultoras familiares, e obviamente para todo o planeta, porque o modo de vida dessas
And for all the planet,
populações são contribuições efetivas para a
this
qualidade de vida no
the
planeta.
lifestyle of these
I would like
people,
to
these
welcome
populations,
you on
are a
behalf of
contribution
it's my great
to
pleasure
everyone.
to welcome you all today to speak on behalf of peoples and traditional communities of African descent, on local communities, and all the other people that are present here today. It's a great honor to be able to promote this dialogue.
Saúdo também as pessoas que acompanham essa conferência de forma remota. Teremos algumas participações ainda hoje, então que realmente seja um lugar de encontro, seja físico, seja virtual, mas que seja muito produtivo rumo à COP30.
I would also like to welcome those that are here participating remotely. May we unite both remotely and those that are physically present here so that we can have a productive and fruitful meeting.
O Brasil tem a honra de receber nesse ano a 30ª Conferência das Partes da Convenção Quadro das Nações Unidas sobre Mudanças do Clima, UNFCCC.
Brazil has a great honor of hosting COP30 at the UNFCCC this year.
A COP acontecerá no mês de novembro, na cidade de Belém, coração da Floresta Amazônica. E quero falar sobre os signos que essas duas informações carregam.
As you may know, the COP will be held in November in the heart of the Amazon in our city of Belém. And I would like to talk a little bit about the two symbolisms that this meeting will bring to us.
A chamada Amazônia Legal, um termo utilizado no Brasil, abriga 33% das comunidades quilombolas no Brasil. E o mês de novembro, no Brasil, é o mês da consciência negra.
The legal Amazon is home to 33% of quilombola populations in Brazil, and the month of November is Black Appreciation Month in Brazil.
Esses dois fatores reunidos reforçam simbolicamente o compromisso da presidência da COP no Brasil em amplificar as vozes das comunidades tradicionais, povos afrodescendentes e agricultores familiares em âmbito da UNFCCC.
This represents a symbolic commitment of the Brazilian presidency to widen or amplify the voice of people of African descent, peoples and traditional communities in Brazil.
Os círculos de diálogos é uma inovação da COP no Brasil, tendo alguns círculos instituídos, e um deles é o Círculo dos Povos, presidido pela ministra Sônia Guajajara.
The Circle of Dialogues is an innovation of the Brazilian COP30 presidency, and one of the circles is the Circles of Peoples, which is presided over by Minister of Indigenous Peoples of Brazil, Sônia Guajajara.
Sônia Guajajara, ministra dos Povos Indígenas no Brasil. Em âmbito do Círculo dos Povos, temos duas comissões internacionais, a Comissão Internacional dos Povos Indígenas e a Comissão Internacional das Comunidades Tradicionais, Povos Afrodescendentes e Agricultura Familiar, coordenada pela ministra Aniele Franco. E é sobre essa comissão que nós queremos falar.
Within the Circle of Peoples, there are two international commissions that were created to help support this process. The first one is the Commission on Indigenous Peoples, which is presided over by Minister Sônia Guajajara, and the second commission is the Commission for Peoples of Traditional Communities and Communities of African Descent and Family Farmers, and that is presided over by Minister Aniele Franco.
A Comissão Internacional de Comunidades Tradicionais, Povos Afrodescendentes e Agricultura Familiar teve sua reunião de apresentação na Conferência de Bonn, na Alemanha, e se reuniu presencialmente ontem aqui nessa atividade.
The Commission for Traditional Peoples and Local Communities, Peoples of African Descent, and Family Farmers had its inaugural meeting in Bonn last May, and its first face-to-face meeting here just yesterday.
Já tivemos duas reuniões virtuais e temos mais duas reuniões virtuais previstas e dois encontros presenciais, sendo eles durante a pré-COP no Brasil, em Brasília, que acontecerá nos dias 13 e 14 de outubro, e durante a própria COP30 em novembro, em Belém.
The Commission has already held two virtual meetings, and it will hold an additional two online meetings, as well as two face-to-face meetings. These meetings will be held during pre-COP in Brasilia in October, as well as in Belém during the actual COP.
Apesar da composição da comissão ter designação prévia, o nosso convite é para que as comunidades tradicionais, os povos afrodescendentes, os agricultores e agricultoras familiares do mundo façam desse espaço um espaço efetivo para pautar junto à UNFCCC sobre as suas questões, as suas realidades, as suas demandas, para que a sua contribuição para a vida saudável no planeta, que é secular, é próprio da forma de ser e de existir desses povos, ela possa ser reconhecida e faça parte do conjunto de estratégias da UNFCCC para o cuidado do planeta.
I would like to invite everybody here today, traditional peoples and local communities, peoples of African descent, family farmers, to help make this an effective space to raise awareness about our different realities, to raise the issues of our different requests in order to ensure that we have a healthy planet and preserve our livelihoods and preserve our planet.
As pessoas convidadas para falar aqui hoje trarão, serão, vamos chamar de fração dessas vozes que temos no mundo inteiro e consideramos que a conversa que faremos aqui hoje, ela é um embrião daquilo que a gente quer deixar como uma semente plantada nesse processo da COP30 no Brasil, para que ela possa germinar, crescer, florescer e que no futuro muito próximo, né, as reivindicações, as pautas desses povos não seja necessariamente objeto de tensão e disputa, mas que tenha um reconhecimento natural sobre a conservação do planeta a partir desses territórios, a partir dessas territorialidades.
My sincere wish is that the speakers here today will be a voice of the different regions of the world, that they will be a seed for COP30 in Brazil, and that this seed will grow and develop in the future so that our requests will not be disputed, but rather respected.
Com isso, eu encerro esse momento de boas-vindas a todos os presentes, a todas as presentes, e agradecendo a UNFCCC por abrir esse espaço de diálogo, né, e que a gente possa ocupá-lo com qualidade. Então, que nessa tarde de hoje a gente possa ter um debate muito rico rumo à construção de um espaço seguro para o diálogo das comunidades tradicionais, dos povos afrodescendentes e agricultores familiares em âmbito da UNFCCC. Portanto, eu agradeço e desejo um bom trabalho para todos nós.
I'd like to finalize my intervention here today by thanking the UNFCCC and Ethiopia for providing us for a space of dialogue for traditional peoples and local communities, peoples of African descent, and family farmers. I wish you all a very fruitful session. I'd like to thank you, National Secretary Ronaldo Santos, for your inspirational remarks and for highlighting the leadership of local communities because it is essential for a just transition, safeguarding livelihoods, health, cultures, and ecosystems. Ladies and gentlemen, this mandated dialogue is divided into several sessions, and it is designed to listen to the lived realities of local communities, their experiences, their perspectives, key challenges, and community-based climate solutions that you are all leading. We will also learn how local communities are recognized and meaningfully engaged in national climate policies and actions, and lessons to strengthen their inclusive participation. Today, we will also explore how local communities organize and lead climate action, and how regional organizations support their efforts, highlight their strategies, challenges, and create enabling conditions that can strengthen meaningful participation and leadership. Our final session here today will provide an open space for local community representatives to share experiences, to highlight priorities, and to propose directions for future dialogues. Let us now begin with session 1, where we will hear the stories from local community representatives on shared realities and experiences that shape their community responses to climate impacts, and also on solutions or practices that communities are leading in order to adapt to and mitigate climate change. In this lead up to the dialogue, we set up a community board where local community representatives who aren't able to join the dialogue in person have been adding pictures, testimonials on their community shared realities. You can see several interesting testimonials from local community representatives from Cameroon, from India, from Kenya, from Uganda, and other countries. The community board serves as a space to amplify your community's voice and connect and exchange with other local community leaders on climate strategies, innovations, and good practices. I encourage you all to scan the QR code and on the slide, and also to share your stories throughout the session and in the coming days. So let's hear from the stories from local community representatives in the room. Kindly keep your interventions to 3 to 5 minutes and allow for more stories for diverse communities. Please, I would like to remind representatives to introduce yourselves by mentioning your names, the community or organization that you belong to, and the country that you come from. The contributors of this first session will be Crescencio Pereira from Mozambique, José Luis Rengifo from Colombia, and Simon Longoli from Uganda, and Maria Josana Lima from Brazil. You'll all be speaking from your respective places on the floor. Crescencio Pereira, you have the floor.
Falou a partir daqui. Boa tarde a todas e a todos. O meu nome é Crescencio Pereira.
Crescencio, se o senhor puder sentar à mesa, por favor.
Posso?
Estamos sem tradução ainda para o português, então acho que eu vou ter que fazer dobradinha novamente.
Boa tarde a todas e a todos. O meu nome é Crescencio Pereira. Eu sou pesquisador associado de uma instituição de pesquisa independente em Moçambique, chamada IESE, Instituto de Estudos Sociais e Econômicos. E sou de Moçambique. Então, agradeço esta
I am from Mozambique. I would like to thank you for this opportunity to be here this morning, and I thank you for sharing these experiences in Mozambique.
My name is Crescencio Pereira. I am an independent researcher from an institute called IESE, which is an Institute of Established Social Sciences of Mozambique. It is a great honor for me to be here today. Thank you.
Quando entrei nesta sala, fiquei a olhar para as mesas, a ver se
When I entered this room, I checked all around to see if I could identify some communities representing my country, and I'm really glad to see a table right behind where I was sitting with representatives from the Mozambique delegations, and I'm really happy about that.
In this space here today, I looked around to see if there were any representatives of my country and my communities, and I was so very happy to see that my plaque was here and that my communities are represented.
Eu tenho dois slides para apresentar com algumas
I have
imagens
two
que
slides
mostram
to
a relação
present
das mudanças climáticas em Moçambique e
in
como
terms
a
of the
comunidade
climatic changes in
tem vindo
Mozambique
a responder
and how
a
the
essa
communities are
a
responding
essa
to
crise
that.
climática. Mas antes eu queria só deixar
But
duas
before
mensagens do
starting,
contexto
I'd like
de
to share
Moçambique.
two messages about
Uma
the
primeira
Mozambique
mensagem
context.
é que
The first one
Moçambique
is
nas
that
últimas
Mozambique,
duas décadas
over the last two decades has attracted lots of investment in the energy sectors, especially for exploring carbon and natural gas. And the second message is the following. Mozambique is one of the countries that was mostly affected in the African continent. It was largely affected by climatic changes over the last 6 years, since 2019. Our country has been beaten by 3 cyclones, like devastating ones, like the Idai cyclone in 2019, and the Fred cyclone, and the Shida one back in 2000. And these cyclones, there was like displacements of community from their zones of conflict. This means that this energy projects, as well as climatic changes that we've been facing, has been provoking changes in the lives of the communities. Here's a PowerPoint slide that I'm about to present. This first slide shows here in the first picture, where you can see Moatize Tete 2021, August 24, coal mining was exploded. It used to be land explored by the Vale company, and this type of a mining exploitation caused great environmental impacts in the communities. Many of these communities were displaced to evade such contexts. It is impossible to live in such contexts, so they end up displacing to other safer areas, resettle zones, but they face other types of difficulties, such as lack of access to water resources and livelihood means in general. Here's the second picture that I'd like to show with you. This has to do with gas exploitation. This process started back in Mozambique since the beginning of 2000. This has triggered many demonstrations, as we can see here, like Stop Founding Gas in Mozambique. That emerged in a COP in Glasgow, and this image went viral because it has split many local communities. A minority has defended to stop these gas projects because they cause negative impacts to biodiversity. There's other groups which have been defending those resources exploitation because these resources will help boost the economy of the country and will foster jobs. This minority group has been protesting, and this is the way that they find to pressure the mining companies. This way, they try to stop such exploitation. They should also think of their environmental and social responsibilities before boosting the economy. Here we have a second PowerPoint slide. Here's a few examples of community resilience. As I said before, because of those climatic impacts, cyclones, droughts, floods, the communities are forced to displace. In the case of Cabo Delgado, you probably heard about such area. Those climatic impacts are severe and visible, and they are very recurring as well. We also have like an armed conflict situation that is mobilized by a terrorist group um, connected to the ISIS that is locally known as Al-Shabaab. So there's lots of contrast at the local level. And this has forced communities to move to safer areas. There are organizations in these areas supporting the communities. And they've been helping communities to have new livelihood means. They've been investing a little more in agriculture with plantations that will help people feed more regularly without needing to plant lots of areas of land. They also have resource to alternative sources of energy, and this can be easily acquired, just like this clay-made stuff. This helps the community cook food. This is basically what I would like to share with you. This is how our communities in Mozambique is facing climatic impact changes and challenges. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Crescencio. Obrigada, Crescencio, for your intervention. If we could have Mr. José Luis Rengifo, please. You have the floor. Señor José Luis Rengifo, por favor. Bueno, if Mr. José Luis Rengifo will be able to speak further on if he arrives. If we could please have words from Simon Longoli, please, from Uganda.
Good afternoon. My name is Longoli Simon. I am a pastoralist and work with a pastoralist advocacy organization called the Karamoja Herders of the Horn. We work and work with pastoralists from Uganda, northeastern Uganda, and with a perspective to the rest of Eastern and Horn of Africa. Pastoralism, by definition, is a livelihood in which herders or livestock keepers move their herds from one point to another in search of pasture and water. And I would like to say that from the onset, changes in weather conditions or what we call the climate change phenomenon gave definition to this livelihood. So from the day go, our livelihood was indeed a reaction to variability itself. And climate change is not a new concept. for our communities. Just one or two examples. In 2022, a drought in most of the Horn of Africa wiped out 85% of the herds. When I visited northern Kenya and southern Ethiopia, I found out that the herds that survived the drought were those that could manage to move to newer pastures. I know I have only a couple of minutes, but I would like to speak a bit about what makes that possible. Within our pastoralist communities, negotiation for resources is thousands of years old. For the Karamojong, for example, Karamojong of northeastern Uganda, where I come from, negotiation is institutionalized, and every pastoralist has to own their skill, be able to negotiate for pastoral resources. I know a lot of scientists, socioecologists in the 50s and 60s thought that in the face of climate stresses, the pastoralists will just sit there and wait for their death. But our experiences show that this is not exactly true. Through management of relationships between ourselves and our neighbors, we can be able to negotiate new resources that makes it possible for us to survive. In the reality of climate change, developing and honing the skills to be able to maintain new relationships to manage the stresses of climate change is indeed for us a matter of life and death. In our practice as civil society organizations or activists, we try and advance practices that ensure the security of tenure for pastoralists and that ensure access to other lands that are primarily not depending on particular groups of pastoralists. So in my community, we have a practice called a tamam, which is called in English, sending the message. In sending the message and being able to deliver a good message and deliver what we call and to trigger what we call reciprocity in resource use, we can ensure that our over 20 million pastoralists in the Horn of Africa, in Eastern and Horn of Africa, can be able to access resources and ensure that our herds can go on to the next season when they have issues. So what does this mean? This is just one of the examples of traditional practice coming certainly from a level of indigenous knowledge, which we believe needs to be tapped into if the community of scientists and practitioners in climate science can be able to appreciate and advance these practices. At the practical level, within our policy cycles, we try and make sure that the governments and other practitioners understand the nuances of institutionalized practices from pastoralist communities such as mine to be able to take traditional peoples and communities through the experience of climate change. Because indeed for us, as pastoralists, climate change is not a new phenomenon, and these communities can rely on us for inspiration. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Simon, for your inspiring words. I'd like to invite Maria Josana Lima to take the floor, please.
Vou pedir licença para ficar na mesa. Como parte integrante na Comissão Internacional de Comunidades Tradicionais e
As a
Agricultura Familiar, nesta
part of the
ocasião,
community of
muito agradecida pelo
family
espaço
agriculture,
concedido
I'm
para
really
que
thankful
alguns
for the
apresentarem
word
as
that has been given to
experiências,
me.
que
Right
considero
now, we're going to talk
exitosas no
about
enfrentamento das
experiences
questões
I considered
climática,
went really well
que é
when
esforço
facing climatic
global,
change
como
issues
podemos
because it took global
tratar.
effort,
Estamos inseridos em
as it has
cenário
been
em
said.
que os impactos das mudanças
We find ourselves
climáticas
in
já
a
se
context
manifestam
where the impact
de
of climatic
forma
changes
concreta e cotidiana.
has
Inclusive,
manifested
isso
in
não só
concrete
no Brasil,
ways
onde a
in
gente
our
já
everyday
viu
lives.
aqui nas apresentações
This
anteriores,
does not only
né?
happen in
Como o aumento
Brazil,
das
as we saw in previous
temperaturas, as chuvas
presentations.
prolongadas, as
Uh,
enchentes
long
recorrentes, a
droughts,
perda da biodiversidade e
temperature
a
rises, the
fertilidade
loss
do
of
solo.
biodiversities,
Diante
and the
desses
loss of
desafios, né, as comunidades
soil
locais têm
fertility.
desenvolvido e
The local
aprimorado, né,
communities
soluções
have been
próprias,
improving
como
and
iremos
developing
falar,
own
enraizadas no
resources
conhecimento
and
do
solutions
território, né, na
based
cooperação
on
solidária
the
e na
knowledge of the
capacidade
territory,
de
solidarity,
resiliência coletiva.
cooperation,
As
and the
experiências
capacity of
vividas,
collective resilience.
elas nos mostram que as comunidades locais
The
têm um
experiences we
papel
lived
estratégico no
show
enfrentamento das mudanças
that
climáticas.
our
Elas
communities
reconhecem
have
profundamente
crucial role when
seus
facing climatic
territórios, suas
changes.
fragilidades
They acknowledge
e
their
as suas
lands,
potencialidades.
their difficulties, but their potential as well.
Com isso, consideramos as experiências, né,
This
que
way,
relevam três
we
dimensões,
regard
nas
that
quais a
the
gente
experiences
traz,
should be seen
né, uma das
from
dimensões
three different
será,
perspectives.
né, a prioridade local, que é a segurança
The
hídrica, a
first one
segurança
is the local
alimentar,
priority, the
acesso à informação e
hydric
tecnologia adequada.
insurance, access
A
to
outra, né,
technology and
dimensão que a
information,
gente
and
trata
the second one
é os
has to
pontos
do
fortes, né, que aqui a
with
gente traz como a
the
organização
strong
comunitária,
assets
né, os
such as
saberes
community
tradicionais, o
organization
vínculo
and
identitário,
traditional
né, com o
knowledge,
território, as
identity
famílias, e o
linked
terceiro é
to the land.
necessidades, né, que é a
And the third one
necessidade
is
de assistência
the
técnica
needs,
continuada,
the
financiamento
needs for
acessível,
technical
por mais que
assistance,
a gente avance no aspecto das
accessible
políticas
funding.
públicas, né,
We've
políticas
been
públicas
making
adaptadas
progress
e
in terms of
valorização
public policies,
desses
but we
conhecimentos
still need
locais.
to
E
appreciate
aí
local
essas
knowledge.
vivências, né, portanto, soluções lideradas localmente não são apenas
Such experiences
respostas
show that
pontuais, né, mas caminhos
local
estratégicos que devem ser
based
integrados,
solutions are
reentrados
strategic
na
paths
mais
that need
ampla
to be walked
de
on and
mitigação e
integrated into
adaptação.
wider practices for mitigating and adapting.
Como soluções, né, que a gente aponta, né, as soluções comunitárias, na vida
Here's a few
cotidiana,
community
as comunidades têm
solutions.
colocado em
In our
ação,
everyday
né,
lives,
iniciativas concretas,
the communities
tais como
have been put into
sistemas
action initiatives,
agroflorestais, né,
concrete
regeneração
initiatives,
ambiental
such as
associada à produção
agroforestal
sustentável de
systems
alimentos,
related
a
to
captação e reuso de água da
sustainable
chuva, né, que
food
isso
production
garante o
and
abastecimento
the reuse
no período
of
da
rainwater.
seca.
And
E
this
três, que a
way,
gente também traz
they
aqui três
guarantee
elementos,
water
que
supply during
as
droughts.
brigadas comunitárias, que aí
These are
é a
the three
organização
important
local para
elements, and
prevenção e respostas,
community
né, a
brigades
eventos
as well.
climáticos extremos.
In this way, they're better prepared to face those extreme
É,
climatic changes
com isso, né,
in
nós
advance.
também
And this way,
apontamos essas lições aprendidas, né, que são
we
importantes. Essas
have a few
vivências
lessons learned.
comunitárias
We
traz,
need to consider
né,
so
valiosos,
those
né, aprendizados,
experiences
né, que um é
from
essa
the
integração de
communities
saberes, né,
contribute greatly
combinar
to
conhecimentos, né, tradições como
the
inovação
integration of
tecnológica,
knowledge.
a força
We need to combine
coletiva, que é a questão da
tradition
organização
with new
comunitária,
technology,
liderança local, como esses
community
motores, né,
organization, and local
da
leadership
transformação.
as
Além disso,
drivers
né, o
for
processo é tão
transformation.
importante quanto o
Besides that,
resultado, né, que é um
this
pouco
process is
do
as
que nós já
important
falávamos ontem.
is what I talked about.
E diante dessas questões, né, quando a gente fala do processo que é tão importante quanto o resultado, o envolvimento da comunidade gera
So
pertencimento,
the community
fortalece
engagement
soluções locais e
results
garante
in
respostas
belonging.
mais
It
justas e
reinforces local
eficazes
solutions
diante
and
da
it
crise
guarantees
climática. São justamente as comunidades que
safer.
sentem os impactos, né, no dia a
The
dia
communities, they
e
feel
muitas
the
vezes
impact in their
lideram as
daily routine,
respostas, né, mais
and they
criativas
lead
e
the creative
inspiradoras para
answers
os momentos
and
que
inspiring
chamam a
one.
vida. Com isso, a gente traz, né, alguns direcionamentos. O
This
sistema
way,
agroecológico
we bring a
aponta,
few
um deles é
directions
o
like the
sistema agroecológico que
agroecology
aponta,
one
né, caminhos estratégicos, que
that
além de
shows
produzir
strategic
alimentos saudáveis de alto
ways,
valor
besides
biológico,
producing
né,
a healthy
promove a
food
saúde
of
do consumidor,
high value
recupera e conserva os recursos naturais,
that helps
né,
recover
fortalecendo a
natural
resiliência
resources
dos
by
ecossistemas,
strengthening
impulsiona o
ecosystem
desenvolvimento
resilience.
sustentável dos
It
territórios,
boosts the
né,
sustainable
coesão
development
social e
with
geração
the
de
social
renda.
inclusion
E para
and
finalizar,
income
né,
generation.
finalizando,
And to wrap up my speech,
nós
here's what I would like
trazemos,
to
eu acho
impart.
que a mensagem, né, nessa relação muito direta,
Here's the
que esses
message that I'd
grupos,
like to share
produtores,
with
agricultores
you.
familiares, são verdadeiros heróis,
Um,
né, diante do desafio que a gente passa das mudanças
they're
climáticas.
great
São
heroes
verdadeiros heróis da resistência, heróis da nossa mesa,
of
que respeitam a
resistance
biodiversidade e
that
fortalecem o
respect
sistema
biodiversity
agroalimentar.
and strengthen the
E é isso.
agro-food system.
Agradecemos aqui pela oportunidade e estamos abertos, né, para o diálogo e para
Thank you so
essa construção
much.
coletiva que é tão
We're open
importante
for this
neste momento.
collective construction that is so important.
Thank you, Josana. What we've heard here is some of the initiatives, the resilience and the strength that already exists in communities in Mozambique, Uganda, and Brazil. I would like to now call Atahiru Al-Hassan from Nigeria to please speak. Please I'd like to remind you to introduce yourself, mentioning your name, the community or organization you belong to, and the country that you are from. Thank you, Atahiru.
Thank you very much. My name is Alassane Tahiru Jaoji. I work for a regional pastoralist organization that is based in Nigeria. I'm also a pastoralist by birth, and I've been practicing pastoralism for the past 40 years or thereabouts. First of all, I wish to express my sincere appreciation to the incoming COP president for the invitation and also the facilitation to attend this very important meeting. For the past 25 years, my organization has been in existence. We've been looking for opportunities, chances to voice some of our own concerns of pastoralists in West Africa. And we've not achieved that until excuse me. This time, we are happy and we appreciate the incoming COP presidency. I would like to say a little bit about the Nigerian pastoralists in West Africa and also the population, our own contribution to local economy and also in the regional economy. Nigeria has about 220 million people, and pastoralist population is estimated about 20 million people. And for cattle, we have 15.4 million. Sheep, we have 14 million number. For goats, we have 24.5 million. And it is also worthy of note to know that the over 250 million people in Nigeria, the pastoralists provide 95% of the meat that is being consumed and 35% of the dairy that is being consumed in Nigeria. We also appreciate, like other speakers, that pastoralists, they own the environment because their life depends on that environment. And for many years, we can say more than 300 years ago, pastoralists have adopted this issue and they've recognized the issue of the climate change because the pastoralists in West Africa, they migrate from the Sahel to the coastal part of the sub-region in search of pasture and water. And this adaptation and strategy to survive, it has been for ages. In fact, many people just say they know that this nomadic movement has been there for ages, and nobody can say exactly how and when it started. So when the issue of climate change came, for the pastoralists in West Africa is something that we knew, except that maybe the language is being changed and science is being introduced to it. Why is it so? But we've been living with it for all these years. So as custodians of the environment, we also know the herbs, we know their medicinal values, we know which fruits are edible, we know which are poisonous, we know almost about the environment, the degradation that we are talking about, desert encroachment. All these are things that pastoralists in West Africa, they know and they appreciate. What are the key challenges that the pastoralists face specifically in Nigeria? One of them is the issue of indigene and non-indigene dichotomy. Pastoralists are considered in many communities in Nigeria as non-indigenous. And if by going by the UN definition of non-indigeneity, we are now being excluded from, owning land, the land that we've been surviving on for the past maybe 150 years, 200 years, because of the non-indigenous status that is, leveled against us. We have been evicted. I have a very sad story to share. My grandfather and my father, they gave birth to us in a community, and we lived there for about 150 years. And they died and they are buried there. But at the moment, me and my family, we can't go to that community. Why? Because we are pastoralists and we are not indigenous to that land. And so we have to go and look for elsewhere where we can live and also survive. And unfortunately, it's unlike money in the bank. When you have your livestock, it's physical. And if you are told to vacate, or if you are evicted from a particular environment, you can't hide the resources anywhere. You have to move. Otherwise, you are going to be attacked and all your animals, will be killed or will be poisoned. And so this is a very big challenge. In fact, some sub-regional governments, they have even passed legislation to say that pastoralists don't belong to that state. And so they have to move out. And if they don't do, their animals will be confiscated and they will be arrested and they will pay heavy fines. We have such bills. If anybody is interested, I can share copies of such bills. So the challenge is huge for us. Where we move now to, we are called strangers because the previous community, we understand the languages, we understand the culture, we share so many resources together, some exchanges and synergies. But now we are in a new community, and of course, we don't understand the language. We don't understand, or we don't share the culture and also the resources. So it becomes a problem, a bigger problem for that matter. So the second challenge is we are being profiled. I don't know if there's another word. Profiling means that if I am moving in a vehicle and the vehicle is stopped by the police or by any security agency, they will look into the vehicle and see, okay, oh, are you a pastoralist? Yes, please come down. I've not committed any offense. With my education, I have a second degree, but that doesn't matter. By my face, they know me, I'm a pastoralist. They will bring me out and start interrogating me. So this profiling is becoming more severe, and we are now being linked to criminal activities. They say pastoralists are bandits, they are criminals, they go into kidnapping for ransom and all this. But sincerely, in every culture, you have bad eggs, In every culture, you have such. But for the pastoralists in West Africa, specifically for Nigeria, it is at a higher level. And when we are talking about the rights of humans or the rights of human beings, I would like to share that the pastoralist literacy level in Nigeria is less than 3%. And political participation is about 10%. We don't have the freedom of movement because of these laws that have been in place. We are not allowed to move with your animals, even at, in the daytime or in the night, you can't move your animals from one location to another. So if these rights are being denied, I don't know how pastoralists are expected to survive in this. We understand and we appreciate the climate change, just as other speakers have said. But the conflict between farmers.
If you could slow down a little bit, please. Some of our translators are having difficulties. Just slow down. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We understand and appreciate that there is climate change because, as other speakers have said, it's something that we see always. We've been with it. We know the rain pattern. We experience flooding, the desert encroachment. We know. So it's something that we know and we appreciate. But as I said, unlike other conflicts where your means of livelihood is kind of scared, in the case of the pastoralists, their means of livelihood is threatened and they are being displaced for no reason than being a pastoralist. From 2024 to 2025, on the average, it is reported that more than 3.4 million people have been displaced, and the figures, for livestock is not quantified, but we know that some are confiscated by government, some by militia, ethnic militia group, local gangs, because we are pastoralists. So, but as we are here, what are we demanding for? What are we asking for? Now that I'm here, what message am I bringing? What am I expecting a body like this to help us do? One is to provide a space for us to view our own plight, to say our own challenges, for people to understand this and say, okay, we have similar challenges in our own environment, and these are the solutions, practical solutions we have adopted. This is one way. The other one is for people also to appreciate, also to have another perspective of the reportage about the conflict in Nigeria, because normally the farmers, they have the space because they are given the status of indigenous and they go and give their own views. And for pastoralists who are not indigenous, they are not represented and their views are not heard. So this is one thing that we are calling for, or we are asking for. The second point is that we want the UN to support pastoralists through the COP30 initiative to advocate for the repeal of certain restrictive laws. We have the national laws, we have also the regional laws. We want those laws either relaxed or repeal. And the third point is that we want the UN and other bodies, to take interest in ensuring that the rights of pastoralists are respected and also protected. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Atahiro, for your words. I would like to call Luis Diego Obando Espinash from Costa Rica to the floor. If Luis Diego would like to make his intervention later on, we would now call Katia Kátia dos Santos Penha of Brazil to the floor. I'd like to open the floor then by asking the room, everybody here present, please raise your hand and take the floor if you heard something today that resonates with your community's experience. I'd like to remind you to please introduce yourself and your community before you make your speech.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. My name is Ruptoya Lema. I come from Kenya, the northern part of Kenya. And today I would like to appreciate Mr. Tahiru for the presentation that he made, because it really resonates with the challenges that we face in northern Kenya, especially on matters concerning land. And when we talk about climate justice, my question to all of you is, what is climate justice if we are taking land from people in the name of conservation and we don't compensate them? We don't care about where they will go. And this is a problem that my community has been facing. She comes from the Samburu community. This is a problem that they have been facing as well. And when we look at all these big entities, they come to our place, they take our lands, and they say that they are promoting conservation. They say that they are promoting matters to do with climate adaptation. And when you ask our elders, do you know what climate adaptation is? Do you know what climate finance is? They don't know anything about that. They don't even understand. So when we are talking about local communities and as we share our stories, we need to figure out how we can integrate local solutions in the international frameworks. We need to think about how we can have the localized frameworks that actually resonate with the people, because it's so sad. We are here talking, we are here having all these policies, but when it comes to the implementation, when it comes to climate finance, the community is not involved. We talk about the FLOCA, we talk about all these things, but our elders don't know nothing about that. They don't know about that. The other day, a young boy was killed just because he went into the land that belonged to his ancestors in the name of his trespassing. Yet they have been grazing there for years. His great-grandfathers have been there for years. This is so sad. It's so sad to see this. And it's so sad to see my people losing their own land in the name of climate or conservation. So let's have a clear frameworks. Let's also bring the indigenous knowledge on the table. As we talk about local communities, we cannot talk about the local communities without considering indigenous knowledge. Because if we put indigenous knowledge here, we will have a better implementation methods. This is something that my team and I tried out. And the Borana community have a program, have a leadership called the Abagada system. And these systems need to be considered. We have the DEDA system that deals with water, and it has been there, it has been working for years. So why is it that right now you're saying it can't work, yet it has been working? So as we look at the local communities, let's consider their views. Let's consider the realities that they have been facing all these years. And also let's consider how they have been adapting to the changes in climate change, because the stories of pastoralists is not just a story that just came about. It's a story of resilience. They have been innovative in their own ways. And if you go deep into the roots, if you go deep into the communities, you will understand that there are better and extremely good solutions that we can use to fight climate change. There are extremely good solutions that we can use when it comes to mitigating the impacts that climate change has brought. So as we discuss this, also let's remember that to keep the stories of the people in our heart. I have loved the story from Nigeria, and it has really touched me. I really get emotional about land issues, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from you, learning more from you. I'm so young, so I'll also learn from you, and I'm looking forward to getting more insights. Thank you, Asante.
Thank you so very much for your intervention. I would like to give the floor to Samuel.
Olá, eu sou Samuel Caetano, sou comunidade local do Brasil, sou geraizeiro e estou presidente do Conselho Nacional de Povos e Comunidades Tradicionais, que representa 28 segmentos de comunidades locais no Brasil. E a gente segue exigindo e solicitando
And we try to demand and to request our full acknowledgement in terms our space of the UNFCCC, because our livelihood is strictly connected to the land, and our livelihood is based on collaboration, which contrasts with the violent model that imposes monoculture, mining, deforestation, and community eviction. Such model is deeply rooted in climatic changes, and on the other hand, our agro-food system are a solution for climatic changes with governmental strategies, and we are able to preserve biodiversity, and we protect the waters, and we stock coal really efficiently. We are not only victims of the climatic change, we are the guardians of the water, the land, and ancestral memory. We need to acknowledge local communities as an agent so that we have our voices heard. COP30 in Belém is a historical event in order to help our local communities. We need to reassure that we are not going to be forgotten again, and we try to reinforce alliances beyond Brazil because of this common link, common ground we have, and all these ancestral seeds that connects different peoples and countries, because when we walk hand in hand, our future breathes hope. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your intervention. I'd like to give the floor to the
Muito
representative from
Venezuela, at the back. Please remember to introduce yourself and to say what community you represent. Thank you.
Olá, boa tarde. Eu vou falar português para a tradução. Eu falo só espanhol.
Should I speak
Eu
English or
estou na
Portuguese?
representação do país de Venezuela, do
I'm
grupo
representing Venezuela right now,
Libertador Simón Bolívar. Nós
and
estamos
the people from
gratos
Simon Believer,
por estos
and
espaços
we're
que
really
permitem levantar a voz do povo
thankful,
que sofre as consequências
and
de
we've been
medidas
suffering
coercitivas
consequences
unilaterais contra o nosso
of
país.
unilateral measures
Medidas
against our
unilaterais
country.
nos
Unilateral
afetam
measures
para
affect us
ejecutar nuestra
so
política
that
de
we're able to
adaptación al cambio
execute
climático.
our
Venezuela ratifica o seu
policies,
compromisso na luta contra a crise climática e ratifica o seu
and
compromisso de
we
continuar
ratify our
a promoção
commitment
de programas de conservação
to
ambiental
continue
na
the
Amazônia
promotion
venezolana.
for
Reafirmamos o
the
compromisso
Amazon, and we reaffirm
de implementar
our engagement
energias limpas,
to
por
implement,
exemplo, no sistema de energia elétrica, 70% depende
and
da água venezolana.
70% depends on our hydric system. The region needs to have ongoing funding in order to be able to implement our actions, in order to comply with our national goals of NDCs and the adaptation plans. And we have a national program of reforestation and hydrographic basins engaging women, local communities, students, workers. And we have 100,000, 100 million plants to plant. And we have a limitation, which is the unilateral measures against our nation. And this prevents us from having the greatest participation in adaptation, mitigation programs in terms of climatic changes. Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias for your words. I would like to remind everybody that we do have translation available. Please make your intervention in the language in which you feel most comfortable in. I would like to give the floor to the representative from Brazil.
Boa tarde, sou Joaquim Belo, sou da Amazônia brasileira, faço parte de uma luta aí de mais de 50 anos, né, de um segmento que se organizou para fazer a defesa da floresta e a defesa da vida acima de tudo. Estou falando da
the Amazon. So this is a struggle led in the 80s and 70s, and that built an agenda of environmental conservation and repairing the rights. So this struggle, this fight, what we're living today, the crisis that we're living today, is part of the solution in itself. And also being from the Amazon region, from Brazil, and living in a traditional territory, a specific model for preservation that grants the rights to the people. So we're not isolated from that process as a whole. So we are all connected with different biomes in Brazil, but also with biomes of other continents, because this is planet. This is only one planet. It's the planet that we're struggling to defend, to save, fighting to preserve this planet. It's just one planet. So this space here that covers the different voices, nationalities, it's important for the strengthening of this process. So we do believe that only this partnership, this really, the union of all the peoples adding to the process, global process, is the way we're going to defend our rights, because the crisis was not created by us. We are impacted, but the ones that are having this impact is our people. So we do believe that we need to work together. This strengthening will help in this way. So as a person here from this mandate given by the Brazilian government towards COP30, and the government has the responsibility to democratize and give spaces and voices, and to have a strategy that the special envoys when sent to COP30. And I'm one of those members here representing the Brazilian Amazon, but we cannot do that alone. So yes, I'm a representative of COP30 and to amplify the voices of the communities. That's why I'm here. But I'm here willing to help in whatever means I can, together with other peoples, other regions, to really increase the pressure, to expand our unity. So this is the only home we have. This is the planet that we have. So that's why I'm here. And I live in a community in the forest, next to a river in the Amazon. This is the address where I live. This is the only address I have. So in that sense, I am here to be another soldier in the struggle that we are living. Thank you so much. Back to you.
I'd like to thank you for your contribution. We've heard voices from communities in Brazilian Amazon, pastoralist communities in West Africa and Kenya, and they've shined a light on the realities of their respective communities and the challenges that they face. I would like to give the floor now to our
Colleagues online so that they may also make interventions. Thank you. I'd like to give the floor to Santiago Obispo, please, online.
Gracias, señora copresidenta, y permítame felicitarle por la dirección de la reunión. Pido disculpas porque en este momento me encuentro en un autobús que va rumbo a Amazonas.
I apologize because right now I'm on a bus that is headed to the Amazon region, and we are going through a trench that has suffered floodings, record floodings. So maybe my sound is not the best. I'm going to speak on behalf of my community. Our proposal is to make available our experience. Just a second, we cannot hear you. We want to engage in synergies with our brothers and sisters from other local communities that are present in Addis Abeba. My Vice Minister of Management of the Ministry of Socialism of Venezuela, Ms. Teresa Carreras, is the person I represent. Unilateral coercive measures are evidence of the violence exercised against peoples. This is what we heard from our brother Atahiru from Nigeria. And I would like to invite him to our next meeting in Panama to be held in October this year on Article 8J, that we are going, by virtue of which we are going to implement a subsidiary body on traditional knowledge and practical innovations and technologies. Madam Vice President, I would like to offer myself to help in whatever I can so that the process of local communities facing climate change can be overcome. So I offer my help to the LCIP. Thank you for your contribution.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry, I'm not so much a tech savvy. So I'm Michael Kakande, and I'm from the Resilient 40, which is an African climate action network that spans almost 30 African countries. Well, I've had very interesting submissions from my brother in Nigeria, my brother from Uganda, and my sister from Kenya. And I don't know if it's public information yet, but Resilient 40 called a petition for an advisory opinion at the highest court in Africa. Clearly, looking for what state obligations really look like in response to climate change. And of course, this is all rotating around all these very interesting issues that we are raising here when it comes to local communities and their participation within decision making when it comes to climate adaptation and mitigation strategies on the continent. Well, we're in so many spaces, and of course we are told as Africa you need to learn to adapt, but we also keep telling people it's very hard for our people to adapt to extinction, to adapt to loss of identity, because there's so many people that are pushed off huge chunks of lands in Africa in the disguise of climate adaptation projects, carbon market projects, and so for us, that was the background at which we went to the highest court in Africa to have an interpretation of the law, given the so many laws that we have on the continent, on what really state obligations really look like. Where do they factor in local voices? Where do local ownerships? Where do local solutions? Where do our indigenous, knowledges come in when it comes to all these, climate adaptation policy strategies that are really pushed down to us from lack of what the global north. So where do our communities really stand? Because like someone has given a very clear example, young people are being shot for walking into lands that they've been born and raised, because they've been taken over by governments and they are being developed for carbon offset projects and all that. So these examples really resonate with us. They are our daily realities for the so many young people in the climate change or climate activist spaces. And of course, it is very good to learn that there is such a local space for local communities and the indigenous people to fully express themselves. But we still feel it is so lacking. But of course, it's a very great step into the right direction. And just to say that your stories resonate with us, and there are such efforts being pushed by young people on the continent at such a highest court in Africa to clearly have a clear interpretation of what our laws really look like and where our indigenous knowledge is, and participation of young people and all these vulnerable communities at the forefront of climate action, because these are communities, like they've been saying, climate change is not new to us. They've been there, they've been sustaining themselves with their indigenous knowledge and aspect of things, but these laws that have been pushed down to them and us by our governments, by multilateral bodies that come and take over very huge chunks of land for these development projects, we clearly don't understand. So we want such an interpretation at the highest court in Africa, but also to clearly understand what roles do our indigenous knowledge really play within the overall international system of what they call climate science. Because we've been so many, I'm privileged to recently have engaged the IPCC chair and asked, like, where do indigenous knowledge really factor into their reports and all that? And he clearly looked at me and said, we are still lacking, we are still struggling with that area. So you can clearly see that there's a very big gap when it comes to what our local communities really have to play within the international policy spaces, and also the science that they bring to this community is still lacking, and we need to create more spaces for their voices to be heard and for their locally driven solutions to clearly be factored into the whole adaptation and mitigation strategies at the international level. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your intervention on the importance of traditional knowledge. And I'd like to thank everybody here for your interventions and for sharing your stories and stories from your communities. We're now going to move on to the second session, which is about recognizing and empowering local communities in national climate policies and actions. In this session, we will now invite party representatives to share how local communities are recognized and meaningfully engaged in your national climate policies and actions. I'd like to invite the following panelists to the podium, and I'd like to remind you all to keep your interventions limited to 5 minutes. Unfortunately, we are running a little bit over our time. National Secretary of Traditional Peoples and Local Communities and Rural Sustainable Development of Brazil, Secretary Edel de Moraes. Mr. Fodai Couch Bayo of the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning of Liberia. And Mr. Surendra Rajpant, Ministry of Forests and Environment of Nepal. Ms. Edel de Moraes, you have the floor, Ms. Senhora.
Obrigada, senhora presidente. Peço permissão.
Mrs. President, I would like to ask permission from my ancestors. I'm the National Secretary of Communities in Brazil. Sustainable Rural Development. Your Excellencies, colleagues, brothers and sisters of the communities here present. Here we are gathered because we know of a very simple truth regarding Brazil and the Brazilian government being of local communities, but there's no climate action that is efficient enough. Being from Brazil, here we learned a lot about this issue, living with our indigenous peoples, Quilombolas people, local communities from Brazil that take care of the planet, water, and the forests. They are not vulnerable only, they are vulnerabilized by the absence of public policies. These people are part as well of the solution. Regarding the Brazilian government, we are advancing in that sense in two fronts of many other actions that are happening right now. One of those is the National Plan on Climate. Regarding the climate change with the period of 2024 to 2035, that is the guiding principle for actions in mitigation, adaptation, and has a sectorial plan dedicated exclusively to peoples and ancestral communities. This plan acknowledges the risks, specific risks that they face with the loss of the territories, food insecurity, and the impacts on health, and values the knowledge as solutions based on nature, likewise as sectorial plan of the indigenous peoples. The second plan that we are developing in the Secretariat is a national plan of peoples and ancestral communities in sustainable rural development. It's a public policy which is structuring to guarantee the rights as sustainable development and to ensure the protection of the territory on these communities. This plan goes moreover the climate agenda, includes social justice, productive justice, and strengthening of the community governance with pillars on sustainability. These two instruments, they dialogue among themselves. The sectorial plan acknowledges that the communities are guardians of the ecosystems and have rights, and very important adaptation to guarantee this acknowledge is led to public policies of fair justice and inclusive development. Climate justice as a principle, a guiding principle of this policy. Brazil has confirmed the climate justice as important in this collaboration to face the historical inequalities submitted to the communities. We need to fight against environmental racism and ensure that the communities that are more vulnerable should be the key role in the transitions for a sustainable future. Call your attention to the international leaders. The presidency of COP in transition will bring three main messages in this process of UNFCCC. First one is the value of the local knowledge. The traditional knowledge should be acknowledged as equal, adding to find solutions that are efficient and based on context. The participation, we need to go more over symbolic representation, the presence of communities and Afro-descendant people and family agricultures should be structured with mechanisms to guarantee the real voices in the decision making. Finance and rights, this really is led to the community. Your Excellencies, the role of the local communities is not only a question of justice, it's necessary for the global success facing the global challenges. Brazil and also has reaffirmed the commitment to ensure that the voices of the local communities, the Afro-descendant peoples, indigenous peoples, and the family agriculturists will be always in the center of the international decisions. This is the only way we will be able to transform the mission into actions, so to have a fair future, sustainable and resilient for all. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Secretary Adam. I would like to give the floor now to Mr. Bayot. In a second, we will project your presentation. Thank you.
Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor to join you today on behalf of Liberia and to contribute to this very important dialogue on advancing the role of local communities in the UNFCCC process. I thank the incoming presidency of the 30th Conference of the Parties for convening this section and the Local Communities and Indigenous Peoples Platform Unit of the UNFCCC Secretariat for the invitation. Allow me to begin briefly in situating Liberia's national context. In January of 2025, Liberia adopted its national development plan called the REST Agenda for Inclusive Development. The REST stands for A, agriculture, R, rules, the other R is rule of law, education, sanitation, and tourism. This agenda explicitly integrates climate change consideration across all of our priority sectors, and it is accompanied by 15 county development agendas in Liberia because we have 15 counties in Liberia. So each of these counties has its county development agenda that is climate sensitive. This actually builds on earlier milestones that we have achieved over the period as a country. One, the National Adaptation Plan that started since 2020 and is expected to end in 2030. That NAP included broad consultations to identify adaptations priority, particularly in agriculture, fishery, forestry, coastal management, water and sanitation, and health with the local communities. Two, our nationally determined contribution that were updated in 2021 and is expected to be validated at the end of September 2025 through a broad-based consultation again with ministries, civil society, private sector, and community actors. And also, I'm happy to inform you that in Liberia, the government of Liberia has established what we call the Climate Integration and Financing Office, intended to include the voices, the community actors in terms of how they localize their expenditure in these local communities. Recognizing and engaging local communities, how are local communities already recognized and engaged within Liberia's climate policies? Like I earlier mentioned, through our NAP consultations, we're able to include farmers, fishermen and women, our community leaders to identify vulnerabilities and priority adaptations measures. Also, through community forest trade and rare plus projects, we're able to create formal spaces for participation and benefit sharing in forest governance. Also through a resilient investment program that we have called the Monrovia Metropolitan Community Resilient Project, intended to protect the coastal environments from the sea for the local communities. And also through our county development agenda that I earlier mentioned that we have within the 15 counties of Liberia, where we had to go to the indigenous people, sit with them and ask them, what are the priorities? What do you want in climate change issues? What is affecting you people as a county, as local leaders? We're able to do that. Despite this progress we have made, challenges remain. There are two critical ones, like many of the countries here present on today. We have issue of capacity gaps. Counties and communities lack technical expertise to prepare bankable projects that meet donor and climate fund requirements. Additionally, we have an issue of safeguards for rights. Without free, prior, and informed consent and transparent benefit sharing, community risks marginalization in land or carbon transaction. From our journey so far, there are a few lessons that we have learned that I would like to point out very quickly. One, inclusive dialogue and investment. We have understood, we have learned that deep engagement with community requires culturally sensitive approaches and adequate time for trust building. Investment in translation, like we have on here today, facilitation and local capacity building have proven essential for land degradation, neutrality, national biodiversity strategy and action plan, etc. in Liberia. Secondly, community knowledge. Local communities possess deep knowledge of environmental changes and adaptation strategies. I heard the colleague from Kenya noting that, and you know, the areas, most of them don't understand climate change issue, but local knowledge is mainstream within the local communities. Our indigenous folks have the understanding of what they want in terms of climate change considerations as well. Sustainable financing is also key. We have learned from our different experiences in Liberia that for local engagement to be sustained, financial mechanism must be in place to support community-based organizations, particularly in implementing locally led adaptation actions. Currently in Liberia, we have funding from the United Nations Capital Development Fund that is actually piloting 2 counties in our country called Lofa and Nima County in terms of adaptation measures, what the people want to do within that county. On a fourth note, strengthening local governance structures, we were able to learn that empowering local authorities, including chiefs and district development committees with clear roles in climate planning ensures better ownership and implementation of national strategies. So we have proposed as a country in Liberia to have what we call the Ministry of Local Government so that we can be able to talk to our local authorities leaders on how we mainstream climate change considerations into our different development frameworks. Second to the last, and the third to the last, preparation matters as well. We learned that small grants and technical support can transform community priorities into fully developed proposals like the locally led adaptation project I've just mentioned. Rights matter also, embedding FPIC, grievance redress and equitable benefit sharing ensures communities are partners, not victims of climate finance initiatives. Lastly, visibility also matters. Climate budget tracking linked to integrated financial management information system makes allocations traceable and accountable at national and local community levels. With this lesson learned, what do you want to recommend to the COP 30th presidency and also LCIPP? In this light, allow me to share these recommendations for consideration very quickly. We are recommending an institutionalized community participation in policy design and implementation. We're also asking that you ensure access to climate finance at the local level. We are also recommending that you recognize and integrate traditional and indigenous knowledge. We are also recommending that you build local capacity for climate governance. We are additionally recommending to enhance transparency and accountability in local engagements. Also, we are asking that you promote inclusive participation, especially of women and youth. We want you to support decentralized governance structures. We want you to establish a community project preparation facility and also the skill of climate budget tracking for efficient resource allocation within local government. On my final words, Liberia stands ready to serve as a partner and pilot with our climate smart arrest agenda for inclusive development, our county development agendas, our national adaptation plan, our NDCs, and our newly established climate integration financing office. We can demonstrate how policy, finance, and community resilience come together in practice. As we look towards COP30 and beyond, let us ensure that the voices of local communities are not only heard, but also resourced, safeguarded, and empowered, because it is in our towns, it is in our villages and counties where climate change is most accurately felt, and it is there where solutions must take root. On that note, permit me to state that with all proper intervention, climate change can put 100 million people into poverty by 2030. That's about the same number of people as the population of Vienna. I hope anyone is here. Thank you.
Thank you for your intervention. I'd now like to ask for Mr. Surendra Rajpant to speak. Thank you. You have the floor.
Your Excellency, distinguished panelists and colleagues, we all are clear that local communities should be included, and it should be the central plan policies should be translated into local scenarios. In this context, I would like to share some practice used in Nepal. In Nepal, in our constitution, in our climate change policy, in national adaptation plans, these document explicitly mention the central role of local government, indigenous people, community groups. The federal governance system has also mandated each local governments to integrate climate and environmental issues in their plan policies and the program also. Secondly, to talk on inclusion in the practice, we have seen real progress ground around 35% of local government has prepared local adaptation plans of actions, which are most vulnerable to climate change impacts. Community-based institutions such as forest user groups and water user committees are directly managing the resources, reducing disaster risk and implementing adaptation measures. This has created a strong sense of ownership in local communities regarding adaptation actions. Thirdly, to talk lesson learned from the community level activities. is giving local governments more responsibility, increases the effectiveness in resilience, and so decentralization of responsibilities and budgeting is must. The community needs knowledge, technical supports, and financial access. So, capacity building is crucial for the upliftment of the local communities. Women, indigenous people, and vulnerable groups need targeted support to fully participate in adaptation activities. But that's why we can say that inclusion must be intentional. And finally, looking for forward, for us, the priority is to ensure that local community have a direct and predictable access to the climate finance, and that they are treated not just as beneficiaries, but as equal partners in climate solutions. We also see the value in more UNFCCC platforms where local voices can be heard and lessons can be exchanged across the countries. So to conclude, Nepal's experience shows that the local communities are already driving climate actions. These questions now is the questions is now is how we scale up their meaningful participation through stronger finance capacity and recognition in the UNFCCC process. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your intervention. It's been very rich to hear about the different policies and priorities and manners of inclusion and integration of local communities into national climate change policy. I would like to open the floor now for interventions. If you would please raise your flag. I'd like to give the floor first to Mozambique and then to Senegal.
Muito obrigada. Chamo-me Cristina Matusse, do Ministério da Planificação e Desenvolvimento de Moçambique. Dizer que
From Mozambique. I would like to say that our planning and inclusion experiences regarding the communities in public policies has to do with the distinction between national policies, such as a national development strategy and the climatic change strategies and adaptation national plan, which focuses on national level. We have districtal plans. When we talk about the communities in Mozambique, we are talking about municipalities and districts. These are our planning units. We have the districtal development plans, and we also have the local adaptation plans that helps mitigate climatic changes. The 154 districts, when they elaborate their yearly plans, because they are granted with a certain part of the budget to plan, and they need to integrate all the actions in the local adaptation plan within their yearly execution plan of their policies by prioritizing the actions that have to do with resilience. Which are the challenges we face? Resource speed in order to implement actions and resilience. We know that everything that is connected to resilience implies higher costs when we talk about infrastructure. We have the LOCO initiative. It is an international initiative, and Mozambique is benefiting greatly from it. It has been implemented in 40 districts out of 154. And these plans have been effective. This initiative is funded by the government, and they need to prioritize their issues regarding urban planning. Here's our great challenge at our community level. Our communities know what their priorities are, but the greatest challenge is resource availability in order to define their priorities. Thank you so much. For your intervention, we'd like to hear you, Senegal.
An independent and also international NGO based in Senegal, working at the head of a climate solution from local to global space, but also working on the energy access transition. But based on such experience that we have in Senegal, in Africa, while we are recognizing the pivotal role of local communities, to some extent, the non-state actors, these are the ones that are more affected, but also a bit neglected in most of the climate spaces and processes. So with that said, in Senegal, we have a lot of climate processes. First, the NAP process that from the first version were more oriented to sectoral approach, like top-down approach, but we do recognize that for this current NAP processes, they are now moving to a more subnational approach, which is good. But what we are still stressing is that most of the local communities are just being considered just for the sake of participation. And we would like to stop from this approach, just saying that it's not just their participation, but the recognition of the climate solution into the process, which is a bit different. The second process is also the national communication, which is under the convention, but also the biennial update report and the last technology need assessment. And as a regional center that we have support most of this process, what we can recognize is that the local climate solutions are not really well factored into this process because just of the top-down approach. We are always starting from analysis on the sectoral base and now try to look at on what can be done. So and I think that it should be the way around, starting from where are these climate solutions from the local communities, but not only local communities, because usually we tend to forget some are the as my former panelists have said, local authorities, subnational district, but also the cultural chief. So these are something that from the current NDC 3.0, we are really advocating to a more and meaningful participation. Always, again, not participation, just inviting local communities to the workshop, but or to some extent recognizing the climate solution. And last but not least is also the long-term strategies that we are elaborating at the moment. So we have been able to because we are the technical partner, we have set up what we call a multi-stakeholder platform where these local communities are heard, but also are promoting the solution. So this is, and that what we call is that we have to socialize much more because most of these people does not know exactly what is the linkages between economic development and climate solution. And so I think that we hear a lot about transitions. These are words that are very convenient for practitioners, but when it comes to the communities, it is something that is not really tangible. So you have to socialize a bit much more further so that they can be aligned with, because they have some solution, but they don't know exactly what are the linkages. And there are some challenges. The challenges first is really for the process to stop or to improve the top-down approach, but the lack of capacities. I mean, the capacity is not to develop solution, but to extend, to scale out this, and I think that is, and also the capacities to elaborate bankable project. The other weakness that we also we want to highlight here is a lack of recognition of technologies. The intellectual property is some barriers, but also the national innovation does not allow these climate solution to be factored into the climate processes, but even to be scaled out at the national level. And last but not least is the accountability. In Senegal, and I can say most of the less developed country, we tend to underestimate the climate action benefit or impact, because just of the MRV system that have been put into place cannot or does not really consider these specific actions that are spread at the national level, but just for the weakness of this system, they were not able to really track down all these climate solutions. So these are the points that I would like to raise based on the experience that we have, but I'm also eager to share other knowledge on how to socialize these things, that so that the practitioners and local community can have a better understanding and work together throughout observatories that we have. We have set up an observatory on climate action and just transition, which is now helping this weakness to be factors and to be fixed also. So with that said, thanks a lot for this opportunity for sharing our experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senegal. European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you, moderator, and good afternoon, colleagues. This intervention is on behalf of the EU and its 27 member states. We want to thank the co-presidency for organizing this event. It's really important and very useful to hear from local communities their experiences on the ground with climate policies and with the challenges they are facing. The nature of local communities might be a bit different in the reality of the EU, but I just wanted to stress that in general terms, we think that it's very important that non-party stakeholders are closely involved in developing and implementing climate policies. And it's important that the parties respect and fulfill their obligations on human rights, including the rights of indigenous peoples, when they develop climate policies, and also the rights of local communities. The UNFCCC can send strong signals to parties and to all actors in this regard, but to a large extent it depends upon parties, as we have heard here, to to implement these policies. And a dialogue at the national level is also very important. In the UNFCCC, we established the local communities and indigenous peoples platform, which gives a voice to those groups in this process. And the EU is open to explore how to enhance the role of local communities under the platform. Thank you.
Thank you for your intervention. I'd like to open the floor again for interventions from the floor. If not, we can move to, thank you, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Thank you for everybody to be here. I would like to start by congratulating the incoming presidency for gathering this session so important for our country. We strongly believe that the integration of local community and indigenous people is key to advance our work in the fight of the climate change. My name is Angela Ebeleke. Like it has been said when giving me the floor, I'm from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I'm the national gender focal point for my country. I'm also representing the local community indigenous people in the group of LDC. And I'm very happy to be with you here. Lastly, I would like to congratulate and thank, the Republic of Ethiopia for giving us this possibility to be here and gathering us here. Regarding the Republic Democratic of the Congo, I'm very proud to announce that we have a law adopted in 2022 giving the right for the land for indigenous people. We really take into account the necessity to have them included in all our discussion. When I said all, it's about the NAP, the national communication, and now for the NDC. We strongly, like I've been said, emphasize this till the level that in the parliament, we've got representative of local community in our parliament. Now regarding the action done on the ground, we are very much trying to give some capacity building and knowledge, especially looking at the status quo in our negotiation. We are talking about carbon credits, Article 6, and we strongly believe that they need to be capacitated at a certain level to understand what's coming in their community, in their land, and then to give them the possibility to get their own choice regarding the international decision. I put some point, but I think this is the main intervention that I want to mention here for the moment. We are also, I forgot to mention, equal participation. This is something that we strongly believe as well in DRC. We are trying to integrate indigenous people in our delegation. We managed strongly in Egypt, and we are trying to replicate the same for Belém. Thank you for giving me the floor.
Thank you very much. I'd like to invite our colleagues online to make interventions. Please raise your hand. All right, I see that there are no Oh, wait, we have one. I'd like to give the floor to the representative from Santiago, please. You have the floor.
Oye, señora presidenta, me disculpo de verdad por...
We apologize from the English booth. The sound is not satisfactory enough. We're losing the participant since the sound breaks. We apologize from the interpretation booth. We apologize from the interpretation booth. We will resume the interpretation into English as soon as we can hear the participant. We cannot hear you. Maybe you can send your intervention in writing to the Secretariat. We would be grateful for that.
Before stepping out for the coffee break, I'd like to invite all participants to use the paper in front of you to mention two key main takeaways from sessions 1 and 2 and place them on the pin boards on your way to the coffee break. The pin boards are located in the back. We will collate the inputs and discuss them further after the coffee break. I will see you guys in 10 to 15 minutes here again. Thank you very much. I'd like to remind you all to come back at 4:30, please. If we could begin now, if we could slowly move into our seats so that we can begin the third part of the session now. So I'd like to begin by introducing session 3. Session 3 is about enabling conditions for local engagement. In this session, we're going to explore how local communities organize to lead climate action and how regional organizations support their strategies, highlighting strategies, challenges, and enabling conditions. I'd like to invite participants to build a picture together of the enabling conditions. I'd like to have all local community representatives as well as organizations implementing projects on the ground to help us understand the enabling conditions that strengthen local leadership and engagement. For this, we have guiding questions for the local communities, which are, how are you organizing yourselves to lead, collaborate, and sustain engagement in climate action? And for the organizations that are implementing projects, how do you connect with and engage local communities, and what strategies ensure meaningful participation? Would someone like to take the floor, please? Thank you for taking the floor.
Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this relevant dialogue. I hope that some of the participants come in. Well, I would like to present myself. My name is Belén Citoler, and I come from the World Rural Forum. I would like to especially thank the incoming COP30 presidency for organizing this dialogue and the UNFCCC for facilitating it. We have here the colleagues, and we appreciate it very much. For those that perhaps you are not so familiar with the World Rural Forum, we are a global network composed of family farming organizations from the 5 continents, from Latin America and the Caribbean, from Africa, Europe, Asia, and the Pacific. So we have many realities within our network, grouping 75 million family farmers in 90 countries. It has been mentioned, but I would like to highlight it that family farming is more than a way to produce food. Of course, this is a very important task, but it is a way of living grounded in the territorial knowledge and in the sense of community that family farmers have and belong to local communities. And this has been recognized by the Decade of Family Farming by the United Nations with many countries that I see here that supported this declaration. For example, Costa Rica, that coordinated the efforts from the government levels at the UN General Assembly. And answering to the guiding questions, how are we organizing ourselves to lead the engagement in climate action? Family farmers are organized from the local to the national, regional, and global levels. They are delivering solutions, but we have seen that there's still a gap between this active role at the local level and how they are engaged in the climate policy process. So as a network, it is a priority for us to ensure a meaningful engagement of family farmers in the climate agenda with three key priority areas. And they are very much related to the challenges that we learned from the participants in the previous sessions. First, we are working on articulating common messages and generating evidence. It's not enough just to say that we are frontliners, but we need to demonstrate it to reinforce the recognition of family farmers as solution providers and strategic partners, not only beneficiaries in the projects. That I think is also a very important element. And the second area is the meaningful participation in the policy dialogue spaces. This refers to the capacity to attend the events, even physically, because this is expensive. There are many visa requirements, interpretation constraints in many cases. So it's something that really needs to be tackled. But more important is also the capacity to engage in the discussions. And this is a huge challenge for family farmers. The participants from Nepal, Kenya, Liberia mentioned it. Family farmers do not necessarily speak the language of the UNFCCC. No, it's very technical with many articles, key negotiation tracks, documents. So it's difficult to follow. And for us, it is very, very important to strengthen the capacities of the participation of family farmers at the national and international level, understanding the climate policy processes. And third, improving the direct access of family farmers to climate finance is another key priority of our work. As it was mentioned, for example, for the representative of Senegal, to scale up the solutions. No, we need to scale up the local solutions. And for that, there's a need to improve the quantity and the quality of the funds that family farmers receive related to climate finance. And how we are doing this, we are not doing it alone, but family farming networks work in collaboration and partnership with other organizations, with other movements, with governments, entities, with international organizations like FAO, IPAD, and others. And I would like to share with you also that we organized a family farming pre-COP last June in Brasilia, and it provided conclusions and priorities of family farming organizations with regards to the key negotiation tracks of the UNFCCC and the presidential agenda. That centrally, I see that there's a next session on priorities for future dialogues. So, well, just not to make it too long now, but I think that it could also feed into the discussions later. So once again, I think we are seeing the relevance of this particular dialogue with local communities. And we hope that COP30 is going to be a key moment to elevate the recognition of family farmers and local communities as key actors of the climate agenda and the discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Belén, for your intervention. I'd like to open the floor for interventions from other communities or organizations implementing projects.
Hi, let me stand up. So my name is Fatima Rajabali. I work for South North, and I'm specifically involved in the Climate and Development Knowledge Network program. We're a global setup, but I specifically look at the Africa region. I just want to share some of our experiences and learnings that are really building on advancing locally led adaptation. And it really kind of speaks to some of the points that have been raised in session 1 and 2 as well. So firstly, around the importance of working with local intermediary organizations. Whilst we want to work with local communities, we actually don't know enough about the context that they work in and the cultural, socio-economic contexts that we need to be very aware of. So we've actually supported local organizations who include a number of local community members. And having said that, that's invited us to really think through how we are supporting their capacity to continue their good work. That means that we need to think about not only the financial implications of supporting the organization, but also their absorptive capacity to continue engaging with communities in a variety of different ways. So for example, in our experience in Kenya with NAPO, the Nature and People as One in Marsabit, we have found that by investing in them and their work, they continue to work with pastoralists and herder communities through a network, but also invest in technologies that enable them to strengthen their engagement. It's, you know, and their engagement is both at policy level, but also about restoration work, which is incredibly important in very arid lands. Secondly, I just wanted to raise the issue of MRV. I think it was mentioned by a Senegalese colleague. I mean, one of the things that I know a lot of countries are now currently investing in is monitoring, evaluation, reporting, and learning processes. Whilst it is the responsibility of our governments to be establishing clear indicators of what they want us to be reporting on, ultimately, if we want communities to benefit, they also need to be involved, and that's usually through the intermediary organizations we work with. So collating the relevant data and information that then feeds up that chain that allows for subnational county governments to be more responsive to the needs that are being expressed by community members in the long run. And it partly also speaks to the GGA agenda, if you will, from a bottom-up process, because we need to understand the impacts of climate change adaptation. And it allows for also more informed decision-making in the long run on adaptation investments at a localized level. And finally, I just also wanted to mention that, you know, whilst we talk about communities, the engagement of local communities, we also recognize that they are not a homogeneous group. It's made up of a lot of marginalized people, disenfranchised people that work within those communities, and also those that are underrepresented. For example, women, young people, amongst many other groupings. So it's also about recognizing that, yeah, when we do think about working with local communities through intermediary organizations or any other ways, that we are accounting for that inclusion lens and inclusive sort of approaches in across all our work. Thanks.
Thank you so much for your intervention. I'd like to open the floor for intervention from other interested parties. Yes, please. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I am Guilherme. I came from Brazil. I work in a civil society organization there, Institute for Society, Population, and Nature. And there we have been working for decades, like for 34 years with local communities, indigenous people, and also family farmers, helping them to access funds to develop their strengths and capacities for pulling their small business to be included in different marketing mechanism for social biodiversity, sustainable use. And also, we understand that one of the main things that really important is the territorial and environmental management and protection. Then we have been really helping them to organize themselves to fight for their territorial rights. And one of the things that bring us here is also the importance to get their voice in the climate regime within the local community, indigenous people platform and other space. And then we understand that there are some nuances. There are people that came first to this space. And we understand that it's important to straighten the internship among these different voices, among indigenous people and local communities, and some family farmers that are based on some principles that have some self-determination self-organization that are based on ancestrality and also on their customary systems of decision, and also that have a collective management of their territories, and also that contribute to biodiversity or to climate change, to mitigate climate change. I think this is a kind of 4 principles that could be used to identify which kind of local communities we are talking about here. And maybe also to help us to understand that it's possible to get the involvement of other local communities around the world in this goal to establish a common ground to dialogue and maybe establish a constituency within the UN system, not only in the climate regime, but also in the desertification and on biodiversity. And I really believe that it's important to open our minds to understand that they are all indigenous groups and local communities and family farmers impacted by climate change, and other groups are also vulnerable people and should be included and have their voice in this space. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much for your intervention. I'd like to open the floor to an intervention from Aisha, please. Wherever you feel most comfortable.
When I see myself, I lose my concentration. Maybe I just close my eyes. So my name is Ayşe Demir. I'm an associate professor of finance economics, development economics at Roehampton University, London. So I'm based in United Kingdom, but I do several interdisciplinary projects in Africa, especially in Kenya, on just transition policies. We have been working with the local communities since 2022 actively. I just would like to highlight here the importance of working with local NGOs, because that's the approach that we adopted in our project. We are now coming to the end. From here, Ethiopia will be going to Kenya to conclude the project. We will hopefully have our first policy brief by December, November. It's a very successful project where the local communities take the leadership of just transition across their own communities through the chamas. Chama is their monthly gatherings. So the most important feature of our project is to work to partner with an NGO. Because approaching an NGO makes our work much easier in order to approach and identify the communities who are in need of just transition, lack of access to electricity, lack of access to clean energy. Another thing, a very important feature of working with a local NGO is to have better coordination, better organization, and methodologically, our most important intervention is training. So we first train NGO on the importance of clean energy transition, which they were not aware of. So we first try to increase their awareness through our trainings. And then we train the NGO representative sample of the members of the NGO. So they have 800 people. We train 200 people across 13 counties in Kenya. And then the women which we train, we motivate them to take leadership roles, clean energy leadership roles across their communities. So what we did, the knowledge they gain in our trainings, they turn it into practice in their communities by taking these leadership roles, which work very well. We reach out through 200 women. We reach out now, I think, almost 500, 600 other women who were not aware of clean energy solutions. We bridge them with businesses. we also had another agreement with business by having group discounts. We provide them customers, they do group discounts. So we bridge businesses with communities, but all has taken place through partnering with local NGOs. So that's what I wanted to address. Another thing, a benefit of working with an NGO is you know how to approach women culturally, religion perspective. So this is the NGO that I'm working with. It's a religious group. So if you know because someone asked me how you keep sustainability of the project, how you monitor, how you motivate them to take these leadership roles. If you know the culture well, if you know their motivations well, you know how to approach them and you make your work sustainable. For example, we, in addition to just transition, we also incorporate stray animal protection, which is not widespread across Kenya, in many African countries, in fact, in many developed countries as well. So we train them in the importance of stray animal protection. We also approach it through a religious approach as well, because many religions have a good emphasis on the animal protection. So which they like, we incentivize them. Now they gain habits of looking after stray animals. And they now become aware that it's not that difficult. They just feed them with their food leftovers. They collect from the local restaurants. They feed them. They are now gaining habits of these type of activities as well. So I think in order to have the motivation is very important, but in order to derive the best motivation approaches, it's very good to work with an NGO who knows local communities, their incentives, cultural aspects, religious aspects, their barriers, limits very well. First, you know all of them, you learn all of them very well so that you drive motivations, incentives, then the practice turns into a sustainable action. So we have now 40 sustainable development, we call them SDG leaders in their communities, and they know that. They know that they are SDG leaders. They now know that what is sustainable development goal, these rural communities, the women's. So, but it's all through partnering with a dedicated NGO and creating good approaches, locally, regionally defined approaches. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have an intervention from our colleague from Chile. Just hold on a second, he's online. The intervention from Santiago Obispo from RedCam is: las comunidades locales tienen una voz común.
Local communities have a common voice with a focus on well, I had not requested the floor. Now that I have the floor, my previous intervention was on how we can empower local communities. I would like to reiterate a call because I think we can have a synergy between the local communities, like working on the Rio Convention, a forum on biodiversity, and jointly with climate change. So this includes the people working under the Convention on Desertification, in particular communities in Africa. So a first call to action would be to the subsidiary body from the Convention on Biological Diversity on Article 8J. And that is an opportunity for us to share these learnings, these lessons that we have learned for more than 20 years. So we have to share this, and with your approval, we could direct a communication to the Secretariat as you have invited us to do. But I want to reiterate a call to our brothers and sisters from local communities so that we can have a synergy on the commonalities and on particularly our common objective, that is saving planet Earth, Mother Earth. That is what it's all about. Thank you very much.
Gracias, Santiago. If anybody online would also
Thank you,
like to
Santiago.
raise their hand to make an intervention, or if anybody here present would like to raise their flag for an intervention. Yes, please.
So thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Stella Napanu. I work with the Integrity Council for the Voluntary Carbon Markets in the Indigenous Peoples and Local Communities Department as the Senior Manager for Indigenous Peoples Policy. And I really want to mention a few things. So for those who may not be aware, so the Integrity Council is an independent non-profit governance body for the carbon markets, ensuring that there is high integrity in the carbon market. So you have the core carbon principle, the CCPs, the 10 science-based core carbon principles that ensure that like they set the independent global threshold for what high integrity carbon markets look like. But in this context of this conversation and the conversation that we've been having the whole time, and we've had a number of cases that my sister here has raised and my brother here from the pastoralist community has raised, and you see that a number of challenges that indigenous peoples face, especially in the carbon markets, that we've also realized is that there is minimal expertise or minimal knowledge of indigenous peoples' awareness of what carbon markets really are, and that sort of hinders how they interact with the market or how they interact with the project developers that come to develop projects in their areas. So the Integrity Council led out a 2-year consultative workshop with different stakeholders in the market, including Indigenous Peoples Organization and Indigenous peoples. And they formed the Indigenous Peoples and Local Communities Engagement Forum, which is an independent, self-led body led by the indigenous people. It is totally separate from the Integrity Council, and they hold a neutral position in the market. So why am I mentioning this forum exactly? Because all the issues that you've raised here are also issues that I've been seeing the forum members having raised, and also issues that the forum members have been trying to tackle. So they came up with 5 priority areas. These forum members are actually globally distributed. There are 8 members, 2 from Africa, 2 from Asia, 2 from Latin America, 1 from Oceania, and 1 from the Northern Hemisphere. And so they noticed that the challenges cut across the entire region, and they chose 5 priority areas: benefit sharing, grievance mechanism, capacity building and self-strengthening, incorporating traditional ecological knowledge and customary laws into project designs, as well as removing also barriers to market entry to ensure that there is a lot of indigenous peoples and local communities getting into the market as entrepreneurs. And recently, 5 days ago, last week on Thursday, they signed off their living strategy on 3 priority areas. They said living strategy so that they can ensure that all the views of different stakeholders and different indigenous people are still continually incorporated into the strategy. So they're focusing on benefit sharing, capacity building and self-strengthening, and removing barriers to market entry. And they will be holding an event during COP30 to make sure that they incorporate a number of voices also into the strategy document. And I'm just mentioning this because after the living strategy, there will also be the implementation aspect. It's only 8 members globally. They cannot implement the work that is there. So they're also looking for people that are doing matters that have tools on these different aspects. And what I'm trying to tell you all is that oftentimes you'll notice that, and now speaking as an indigenous person, not as ICBCM, I will mention that as an indigenous person, you notice that the challenges that we oftentimes have is not understanding that this is actually a market and it's a conversation of transactions. Like, you know, it's a business basically. And without that aspect of understanding that it's a business, you find that it hinders indigenous peoples and local communities from actively participating in the market, and now are often sidelined and seen as beneficiaries. And it is really important now, as we continue to have this conversation, to really see how can we as indigenous peoples and local communities also organize and make sure that we create a community of practice and make sure that we have this global movement of various market actors or various people. And also the forum is working on creating a convening platform to make sure that all the indigenous peoples and people that are interested in learning about the market, it holds a very neutral position. So I'm mentioning this because we also have the indigenous peoples and local communities engagement forum co-chairs and present in these sessions. So I will be happy to link anyone that is interested in that conversation also to the co-chairs, so that we can also see how to advance these policies and make sure that every voice is incorporated in the discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your intervention. I see a hand behind. Thank you. If you have the floor.
That's my second time. So Samba from Senegal. But I would like just to align myself of what Aisha have said about the socialization of just transition. You know, usually when we talk about energy access, it is easy, understandable. But the missing point is that the nexus between energy and agriculture, because we are the community that are vulnerable to climate threats. And also we are relying on agricultural productivity. But we know that it is the main sector that is the most vulnerable to climate change. But we see most of the production that are being lost because just of lack of energy access, like solar pumping or proper storage equipment. And that's where you can find easily the linkages between why we are promoting energy access for this community, but also why this is something that has to link together. So that's why we are saying that we should not only focus on the short-term solution, but the lasting one, the one that are really sustainable. And in that sense, we have set up the observatory on just transition, and we are eager to share more insight on that, but also to develop a South-South cooperation on the observatory that has been, I know that there are a lot of observatory, but here the missing point is if you want to influence, you have to have some evidence-based policy. And this is something that is a bit gaps when it comes to local communities. They know what is the solution. They know the barriers, but they are not able to put it into a simple paper or something that is very valuable. So I think that what we can do to further enhance the participation of local communities is to help them not only to develop their capacity, but also to support them in gathering evidence and have write a kind of short policy paper which really capture most of the gaps, but also some of the solution. So this is really what I would like to advocate for, and also as my previous participant have said, to develop this South-South learning experience, it will be much more valuable for how the local community can be better integrated into the climate policy, but to some extent the just transition pathway that is being designed. So thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much for your intervention. We will accept one last intervention from the floor from Guatemala, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Adela. I am a Maya Cachiquel indigenous woman from Guatemala. And in my region, around Lake Atitlan in Guatemala, a group of women known as the Guardians of the Lake have organized themselves to collect the trash polluting and pulling in the water. They are not waiting for someone else to come and fix the problem. They are leading with concrete actions, working across communities and staying committed day after day. This example shows that local communities are not just participating, they are leading solutions, protecting the life of our ecosystems and raising awareness among new generations. When we talk about climate action, it's not something distant. It's happening in our source, in our towns, in our homes. And one of the biggest challenges is that too often our voices are not reflected in the text that are adopting in the negotiations, even though our experiences are essential. Let me share a close example. My colleague Andrea was invited to this space, the Africa Climate Week, but she didn't receive the funds on time, nor any clear communication about her financial support that limited her participation. This cannot keep happening because the presence of youth and indigenous communities in these spaces is crucial. If we truly want local voices to shape global decision making, then commitments need to translate into resources, transparency, and real logistical support. And if global leaders really want to engage with local communities, they must consider something basic but fundamental: a language. Many of us are still learning English, others don't speak English. So how are our voices going to be heard if interpretation is not provided? Without interpretation, barriers multiply and voices are silenced. We have interpretation in this meeting, which is so good. And I hope in future dialogues, interpretation must be provided in the languages we speak. Not just to translate words, but to recognize the dignity and identity of every participant. And local communities are already organized, already acting, and already leading. What we're asking is that our voices to be heard, that our knowledge be valued, and that we are given the conditions to participate fairly and meaningfully. Because without local communities, there are no lasting climate solutions. Thank you.
Thank you for your intervention. And we have one intervention at the bottom of the room. If you'd like, you have the floor.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Mail Abu Osman. I come from Somali. I work for NGO, Somali Environmental Development Organization, SEDO. Somali is the most vulnerable country, climate change. So, SEDO, we recommended for the, mostly we can dedicate for the local NGO for the support for the climate change. We started for up to 2016, up to now, we are working for the climate change. We started, we are first NGO that work for in climate change in Somalia. And we can get for the priority for climate change and the funding, and that is difficult for the Somali. All implementation they're taking for the international NGO and the government. That is the, we are saying and recommended we must get for the local NGOs, they get for the implementation for the climate change. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your intervention. Let us move now into the fourth session, which is about listening and learning together. It has an open dialogue format, and it will provide an open space for local community representatives to share their experiences, to highlight priorities, and propose directions for future dialogues. On the screen, we have the two motivating questions, which are: what key challenges and opportunities do local communities want to bring to the forefront? And what topics or approaches should future dialogues explore to respond to these realities? I'd like to invite representatives from the room to reflect upon these questions. Most especially on the second question on topics and approaches for future dialogues. Yes, Samuel?
Porque fica ouvindo no fone, demora a reagir. Mas, Samuel, comunidades locais do Brasil, Geraizeiro, eu acho que uma grande oportunidade de diálogos futuro é, na pré-COP, a gente organizar um espaço onde os diversos povos e comunidades locais do mundo possa ter um diálogo mediado pelo secretariado da UNFCCC, no sentido de conhecer.
Samuel, minuto, por favor. We're having some problems with translation into Portuguese.
Perhaps we could accept an intervention from Belén while we figure out what's going wrong with the translation into Portuguese, and if not, I will help you.
To let you know, he was speaking in Portuguese, so there's no translation into Portuguese.
Belén, please.
Well, I think the idea that was going to develop him, we agree on that. So, because we have also been sharing before, so I would like to support what you are mentioning also as part of World Rural Forum priorities for or suggestions, no, for future dialogues. I mentioned to you that we organized a family farming pre-COP in June. So I would like just to share with you some of the suggestions on topics that we would like to address. I mean, at better integrating local communities and family farmers in the UNFCCC key negotiation tracks. And for us, it refers to the global stocktake and the NDCs and the national adaptation plans. This was also one of the topics discussed today, so this is really good. Also on the global goal on adaptation, the indicators, there's a huge discussion on the indicators, but how they capture the reality of local communities or family farming or different type of producers, and also the engagement of local communities in the implementation of the Baku adaptation roadmap. Adaptation is a key agenda for us. Just transition, it was mentioned, how it considers family farming and the reality of rural communities. And of course, the improved access of family farmers to climate finance frameworks, the meaningful engagement in the implementation of the Baku to Belém roadmap, the loss and damage fund, how we can better be engaged and participating in those processes. Gender and youth, we are happy to be in the process of developing a new gender plan. But yes, of course, these are key priorities. And it was mentioned today, land rights is a primary precondition also for climate action. So those would be some of the key priorities that we would like also to share and see how we can better contribute to the discussions in next dialogues. Thank you.
Thank you, Belén. If we could try Samuel again.
In the next event, I will be speaking in English. Meanwhile, they have to speak in Portuguese. That's why there was no interpretation into Portuguese. What I wanted to propose is that during the pre-COP, we can organize a dialogue among the different communities, local communities throughout different continents, especially those who are in the UNFCCC, where we can see right in the eyes and do what we do in the territories. It was very important for us to have these conversations. If we have had this opportunity it wasn't like it was. So I can say that it's very important to organize these spaces in dialogue among the different communities locally at worldwide level. I think this is very important. And I ask that organizations as parts should strengthen this dialogue. We need resources. We need to be a priority in this debate. So I live in Brazil. If I hadn't had the financial support, I wouldn't be here. So the organizations that work with climate and local communities, we need to be prioritized because this is going to be very difficult to be able to really occupy these spaces with quality. I think this is very important. COP in Brazil is presented as a wonderful opportunity to have this debate among the communities. I think I'm pretty sure we have a lot of diversity in Brazil with quilombolas, Afro-descendants, and a lot of communities. So the huge legacy of this COP should be to express this throughout the world, and it's possible to do so. So this space has to be guaranteed as a future dialogue space and of opportunities too, because really we need that. And maybe the next COP, maybe in Australia, on Turkey, yeah, we will not be able to do that advocacy due to the lack of participation. So really, before anything else, we need to build solidarity, partnership, the real actors that protect climate. And really, that's what the local communities do. So I do think that it's important, very important, that the institutions here represented give that priority to the space of mutirão, of a collective, to have a conversation, warmth, ancestral, and also political, which is different to do it otherwise. So we need to see ourselves, to acknowledge each one of us, the differences that we need to deal with respect and the opportunities so that we can build a global policy of inclusion, participation of the real guardians of climate. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you very much for giving me another opportunity to contribute to the future discussions. I think in my own presentation, I've highlighted two issues. One is the issue of literacy level among the pastoralists. I would very much like to see focus being made on education. You know, you can't adapt to any technology if you don't have the education, or you don't have a technique. All these climate change adaptation techniques we are talking about, they require a foundation of knowledge. And some people say knowledge is power. And for the pastoralists in West Africa, I think if this issue of education is tackled, maybe 20% of the issues will be resolved, because if we are displaced and we are educated, we can also use our own knowledge, to force ourselves into the government, even if politically we are not going to be elected to be there, but educationally we have the knowledge and we have the capacity, to be part and parcel of the governance in many of these territories. So I would like to see the focus being made on education. The other aspect is what do we do with the vulnerable people, people that are being displaced, the women and then the children. We often see, and I mentioned in my own presentation, that about 3.4 million people have been displaced. But largely you find they are women, aged and small kids that, they are innocent, they don't know anything. Is something I think we need also to reflect upon. These are the two issues I want to highlight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have our colleague from South. We have Kenya and South Sudan. Could South Sudan go first and then Kenya? We haven't heard from South Sudan yet.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity again. Okay, so when we focus, I already mentioned, my name is Victoria Lema, and I already mentioned the challenges that the local communities face. But when we talk about the opportunities that the communities can bring forth, I believe that the indigenous knowledge that is showcased by the communities and that is practiced by the communities every single day is something that can be integrated in the international frameworks. And when it comes to the marginalization of the communities, especially on policy frameworks, this needs to end. And it shouldn't just be by words, it should be by action. If we are talking about ending marginalization of local communities, let's implement that. Because we believe that there's so many things that can be worked on if we work together as partners, but don't sideline the indigenous people. Because the indigenous knowledge will really improve the livelihoods of a lot of people, not just in Kenya or the specific local community, but it can be scaled because it's something that's replicable. We have heard from Nigeria. I was talking to some of the representatives from Brazil, and when you look at this, most of the challenges that we are facing, some of them are common, if not all. But if we put all these things together and synergize them, I believe that we'll come with a clear framework and also ensure that when we talk of FPIC, the free prior informed consent, ensure that we educate the communities about this. Because one time I asked the elders about entering one of the sacred forests, and he said no. This is because he didn't know what I was going to do. But the moment I explained to him what I want and the information I want, he was very much willing to give me the information. So when we talk about all this science and everything else, let's also integrate indigenous knowledge, because this is a very valuable tool that we can use. It's an asset that we can use to ensure that the world becomes a better place and we fight the common enemy. I will quote what my friend said. He told me that we are working together. No, we should work together to fight the common enemy, that is climate change. So let's not work in groups, like different groups, but let's all work together as local communities to fight the common enemy. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your words. South Sudan, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm Manila KG. I work for the government of South Sudan. And in South Sudan, we have national government and sub-national government, which is the local government, and we work directly with the communities. So when it comes to key challenges and opportunities in my country, as South Sudan just came out of war, then climate change comes in. We have a lot of floods, we have a lot of drought. So my communities are really disturbed. It's like they were like I don't know how to express it, but some of we have the two communities. We have the pastoralists and we have the farmers. So we as a government, when we go to the farmers, like bringing them adaptation plans like this, we discover that like after they have produced their products, the pastoralists, because they have been displaced with floods, their animals comes and eat the farmers' products. So it becomes a conflict, like conflicts between the two. So the government is now facing serious problem to help this. So this is an opportunity for us as South Sudan here now, that we need the international communities to help us so that we develop policies, we develop frameworks, and also to bring solutions. Because the pastoralists, the population of the cattle in my country is higher than the population of people. So there are 34 millions and we are 12 millions. So there's a lot of opportunities in meat productions, in milk, in anything. And these need bigger capitals whereby the government cannot. So we are helping, echoing my voice to the lady here, which says we need financial support. We need the loss and damage to be implemented so that it helps my country. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your intervention. I'd like to give the floor to the gentleman in the back with the cap.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for giving this wonderful opportunity. Before I mention some important pointers, I would like to introduce myself in short. My name is Kuchada Dababa. I'm from here, Ethiopia, in a position environmental protection officer. Okay, there are so many points I mentioned related to the challenges and opportunity to local community. Some challenges also create what opportunity. So we can use this challenge as opportunity. And there are so many points I mentioned by many people so far, especially the Kenyan ladies explained the challenges and opportunities. So we can use the indigenous knowledge as a resource and identify the root cause of the climate in that particular area is very important. So in addition to the local knowledge and experience, we have to use the technology, scientific knowledge for effective implementation and more outcomes we can get when you use modern technology, scientific knowledges for successful implementation of the climate change. So these are some of the most important things. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much for your intervention. I'd like to open the floor for anybody who'd like to intervene. Do we have any interventions virtually from our participants online? No? Okay, thank you. Then I would like to move towards the wrap-up discussion, where we'll identify the key messages, priorities, and areas for further work. I'd like to start by highlighting the testimonials by showing the community board that was developed during this dialogue. I'd like people to continue to contribute to this community board as we lead up to COP. So please post your pictures, please post your interventions, please contribute to this process. We identified unity as an operating principle. Echoing Mr. Santos' opening remarks, participants reiterated that only a united effort would deliver a productive meeting and an effective climate action. We only have one home and one planet, said a representative from Brazil. Inclusion grows justice. Recognize and nurture the seeds of diverse voices, creating the conditions for them to grow into inclusive, just climate actions. Reciprocity guides coordination. Communities coordinate and negotiate based on reciprocity, a principle that has sustained pastoralist livelihoods for generations. We have seen community-led transformation. Community organizations and local leaders are drivers of change. They recognize, resource, and elevate their leadership for the benefit of all. Local knowledge nourishes people and ecosystems. Local communities hold the knowledge that sustains healthy food systems, advances social inclusion, and strengthens ecological health. Mobility is adaptation. For pastoralists, movement is a core adaptive strategy and knowledge system. Restrictive policies that limit mobility erode livelihoods and limit heritage. Protect local communities from exclusion and dispossession. In Nigeria, pastoralists are treated as non-indigenous and subjected to exclusion and eviction from lands where they have lived for generations and where their loved ones rest. Respect rights. In practice, parties should recognize and uphold the rights of local communities, including traditional pastoralists, land, culture, participation, and mobility, upholding the call as enshrined in the Paris Agreement's preamble. From victims to leaders, local communities are not impacted by climate change. They are co-designers and leaders of the collective response. Engagement is therefore essential. We require meaningful engagement, because it is not only a matter of justice, it is indispensable to building a resilient future for all. Valuing diverse knowledge systems is recognizing the importance of diverse knowledge systems, including local knowledge, in localizing national and global frameworks, improving their efficiency and effectiveness. We have to invest in trust and access. Deep engagement requires culturally sensitive approaches and adequate time for trust building. Investments in translation. Just a second. Facilitation and local capacity building are essential for meaningful participation. Further local community engagement in the LCIPP is exploring how to enhance the role of local communities in the local communities and Indigenous peoples platform under the UNFCCC process. Looking forward to COP30 and beyond, we must ensure that the voices of local communities are heard, resourced, safeguarded, and empowered, because climate impacts are felt too acutely in local communities, towns, and villages, and these places are where solutions must take root. I'd like to show the visual from session 3 and briefly highlight the points that arose. I'd like to thank everybody for their valuable contributions across the mandated dialogue, and I'd like to move towards our closing remarks. As we come today to close of this first mandated dialogue, let me briefly reflect on what we have shared today. We began by recalling how the COP and the CMA, through multiple decisions, reaffirmed the critical role of communities and their collective effort to address climate change, encouraged further engagement of local communities across the UNFCCC process, and invited the incoming COP30 presidency to convene dialogues and a thematic workshop. These stories and perspectives we heard today made that mandate tangible. Local communities are often amongst the worst affected by climate impacts, yet their leadership is essential to a just transition that safeguards livelihoods, health, cultures, and ecosystems for all. We also heard how the lived experience, place-based knowledge, social cohesion, and innovations of local communities make climate policy not only more efficient and effective, but also more durable, scaling deeply within cultures and across generations. Taken together, today's discussions have underscored that local knowledge, leadership, and lived experiences are central to the inclusivity and effectiveness of the UNFCCC process. And looking ahead, this dialogue is just the beginning. As a part of the initiatives of the incoming COP30 presidency, we warmly invite you to sign up and stay connected using the QR code on the screen or via the LCIPP portal, as we shared earlier, to receive updates on next steps, including important information about a second mandated dialogue during the pre-COP in Brazil in October, building on today's rich and honest exchanges. Together, these dialogues will feed into the thematic workshops being planned in conjunction with COP30. With this, it is my pleasure to invite Edo de Moraes, National Secretary of Traditional Peoples and Local Communities and Rural Sustainable Development of Brazil, to deliver the official closing remarks.
Mais uma vez, peço permissão aos meus ancestrais e cumprimento mais uma vez a presidência da mesa, já aproveitando para agradecer, senhora presidente.
Mrs. President, for this session, ladies and gentlemen. I was here with a double mission: to speak as a National Secretary of communities and ancestral peoples, and to talk to you that and say to you that my country has been working and has been building for the visibility and for the presence of traditional communities. I was also here. I've been here listening, and I've been invited to speak representing the presidency of the COP in the name of our presidency that coordinates this commission, our minister Anieli Franco, who is responsible for this agenda. I was listening to each and every one of you. I did a lot of note taking. I did all my duties to listen actively. That's why we are here. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues of local communities, representatives of the parts, we are closing this fundamental dialogue to strengthen the mission and to speed up the implementation of the global climate action. Today, it showed once again that there is no way possible without the cooperation, without the solidarity, without the commitment, the shared commitment, the voices of the communities, of the local communities, the family agriculturists, Afro-descendants, and all the representatives of the local communities that remembered us. The climate crisis was not created by them, but it's really they who are being impacted. Their agroecological practices, their systems, agriculture system, also the management of the territories are live examples of adaptations and resilience that we need to acknowledge, value, and support. So we also heard about the need to guarantee the participation of these communities in the processes of decision making, as well to ensure transparency, decentralization, access to financing, integration of the knowledge and contributions nationally determined is going to be fundamental for the collective success. As the presidency of the COP, we reaffirm the commitment to expand these voices, to work with the local solutions so that they can be a fundamental part of that global response. So this will all make sense if there's a concrete implementation. This is the message that I wanted to give to you. It should be just and inclusive. It was already mentioned that the planet and the challenge is common. This is why we are here. We need to strengthen these partnerships. We need to have strong policies and climate action that respects biodiversity, the rights and the ways of living of all the peoples and local communities. Excellences, colleagues, representatives of the civil society, and representatives of the parts. The presidency of the COP has summoned today all of us to have really a collective, a multi-round against the climate crisis, inspired in solidarity of the Brazilian people, facing all the difficulties that we have, and only a collective action can we face all the challenges of our time. Our proposal is clear that the COP should be a real implementation framework led by an action agenda structured in 6 axes: energy, forests, seas, food systems, urban resilience, human development, enabling mechanism as finance and technology. We say that the global stock take should be understood as a global contribution that can guide us not only to work together with global objectives. This journey should be supported in 3 pillars. This is the last chart of the presidency: implementation, transparency, inclusion, and no actor should be left behind. Government, private sector, the youth, indigenous peoples, local communities, authorities, subnational authorities. Your Excellencies, COP30 is not going to be only a conference. It's a moment to transform our ambition to action in dialogues, results, and cooperation, and a collective multi-round for life and climate. Thank you very much. Back to you.
Muito obrigada, Edel. My sincere thanks to all of the speakers, all of the participants, both in the room and both those who joined virtually. This dialogue is a meaningful process because of your active contributions. This concludes today's dialogue on advancing the roles of local communities in the UNFCCC process. But before I finish this meeting here today, I'd like to invite you all to the forefront so that we can take a picture of all of us and all of those who contributed so richly to today's debate. Thank you, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, please come towards us for the family photo. Everybody needs to be part of the family photo.